All right, everyone. So today I'm going to get in the first of like three videos of the Society Joining the Enlightenment. It's kind of building off the art and literature, music stuff that we did, and hopefully this one won't be quite as long. So let's just get right into it. And so the first thing we're going to start with is literacy and education. And we are going to get a massive expansion of literacy and just overall the reading public, okay? And I think a lot of this is going to have to do with the publishing industry, okay? You're going to have just improved methods with the printing presses, and eventually the Industrial Revolution is going to get involved in that as well. And there are going to actually be more things to publish. To give an idea, just talk about France. So in the early part of the 1750s, France was putting out about 300 different works per year. Okay, by the 1780s, so just 30 years later, France would be putting out over 1,600 works in a year. And so, when there are more things to read, you generally do see literacy go up. And also, when you have a growing middle class, more people actually have a little bit of education and could read. And then they also had money to buy things and the time to read it as well. I mean, and if you just look at these things from the 15th, this chart over here on the right, I mean, you're talking about massive numbers. Now, we're not at like the literacy rates that you see in the modern world today in the 90s in most industrialized nations, but I mean, to go to all of these places are under 20%. Many of them are under 10% in the 15th century. And then by the 18th century, you're looking at two nations that are over 50%. Some nations making a run at 50%, other nations in the 40s and 30s. I mean, that's a significant jump that really that you had anywhere. All right. And more commoners are getting involved in this as well. Okay. And we're going to have some long-term impacts of that as we move forward. Now, you also have different types of things to read. So it's not just books. And now we are living in the digital age today and we're seeing these things disappear, but magazines were pretty much a big deal, I would say, all the way through the 1990s and even early 2000s. And yes, there are still magazines today. Many of them are literary or sorry, are digital in nature now, but the setup is still kind of the same. So the idea of the magazine, this is written for the general public. This really isn't for the super wealthy or anything like that. We're talking about kind of mass media here. And they would massively grow. Like, for instance, just by the time of 1780, Great Britain would have over 158 magazines. They would be on a wide variety of topics. And the one that really kind of takes it to the next level is The Spectator, which was created by Joseph Addison and Richard Steele. These would have serious articles and essays on philosophy, while at the same time having articles about entertainment and like borderline gossip and stuff. And this was also an interesting way for women to get educated and involved. And not too long after The Spectator was created, Eliza Haywood created The Female Spectator. And not only did Haywood have articles that were aimed at women, but many of the feature articles would also be written by women. And that's going to be like a big, big thing. And so we see here is a picture of The Spectator from 1711. Okay. And Addison and Steele on the right there. And then here is The Female Spectator, okay, which debuts in 1744. We also have the creation of daily newspapers, which again are something that are fading away, but still very important to us today. The first one is in London in 1655 is your first newspaper. And then the first daily newspaper, this is a big deal, is in London in 1702. And then by 1780, they had 37 English towns had their own papers. News, special features, etc. They're going to be very cheap. And in some places, they're actually offered people for free to read. So many people will actually be able to or have the impetus, if you will, to learn how to read because you have so much of this material. And then eventually we'll talk about the importance of like journalism and its impact on society and its impact on politics. But now we're just having to get that information out to people. And newspapers are crucial, guys, because, just in general, an informed society tends to achieve more things and tends to be more involved. And newspapers are the way to do that. We also have a wonderful man by the name of Alan Ramsay, who helped to create the first circulating library in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1725. And what's so important about this, guys, again, this is not only the collection of knowledge, but giving more and more people access to it. The idea of libraries in the past, whereas they were very important, but they were merely really just for like scholars, whereas now the whole idea of libraries is that regular people can go in, and it's not just fiction books, it's getting nonfiction books and knowledge, and many people are able to kind of change their career paths because they have this access to knowledge. And what along with that we have are the changes to education, okay? Now, Europe by the 1700s had quite a number of private secondary schools, and the idea of secondary school was like the modern of middle and high school. They are fairly elitist at this time, and you're really only educating the children of the wealthy and the nobility. And in a way, the function of these schools was to keep the social classes intact. Again, these private schools, that's the purpose of this. But the idea here is that many people are seeing this as a necessity because we need our leadership to be educated. This isn't the Middle Ages where you cannot be literate and run a country or be a minister in a country. Now the fact of the matter is in order to have a ruling class of people and bureaucrats, they need to be literate and they need to be educated. And we study lots of Greek and Latin classics, as well as some political stuff, but not much in math or sciences at this point. However, school is going to start to change a bit, and it's not necessarily always about the rich kids. I mean, it's kind of about the rich kids, but here we have the merchants. Now, we've talked about this before, and that merchants are starting to grow in scope and influence, and they also understand the need for people to know multiple languages and more practical knowledge. And what you have happening, like for instance, in 1747 in Germany, the German lands, there is no Germany, is that you have something called the Real School that opens, the first one in 1747 in Berlin. And so what is changing here, we are going to be teaching about modern languages, geography, and bookkeeping, which were your core subjects. And the idea was to prepare people for the business world. In some cases, girls would attend, but a lot of times the girls' curriculum would focus more on religion and domestic skills. But we are seeing the idea of a practical education. And again, this is crucial now. This is mainly merchant kids going to these schools. So some are wealthy or some are middle class. And so the commoners were still kind of waiting for things. Universities, not much different here, guys. We've talked about this before. Really just for the elite. Lots of classical and Aristotelian philosophy. Not a lot in science right now, which is amazing. But some scientists would start to work out of universities at this time. What's going to be really big is the development of primary schools, and this is going to be a crucial change. Overall, we're going to see a very large expansion here, particularly in the Protestant nations, because here's the thing, people need to be able to read the Bible. So if you're going to be able to read the Bible, you need to know how to read. And so we're talking about the Swiss, the German states of Saxony and Prussia are going to be the big ones. And the goal is to get almost all people some type of education. The upper class, shockingly enough, really doesn't like this because the idea of an educated lower class gets them a little bit nervous. So that can be tough. But overall, we will start to see the beginnings of the success here. And for instance, here, this is an Austrian Volksschule, and these are state-run primary schools, so they are offered for free. You don't have to pay to go to the school. Now, early on, only 1 in 4 kids are attending, but we have to start somewhere. Okay, And what's good here is overall, we are going to see improving literacy rates. France goes from 29 to 47%. Women's rates are doubled. Middle class workers and artisans, by the end of the 18th century, you're looking at like 85% of them are going to be literate. And so we're starting to see this move toward education, which is going to be tremendously impactful, okay? So we will continue on in our next video, but this is to focus on the schooling and literacy stuff. I'll see you guys soon.